All right, so I've been getting a lot of questions lately about how to motivate yourself to write, how to, work your way through the outlining process. What happens when you have a good idea for a story and you're super excited about it, but when you're planning it, you sit down and you kind of just hit a wall at some point. What do you do? How do you get through that? So today I'm going to talk about a technique for how to put yourself into a pure, flowing, creative state, okay, so that you can really get that story flow going on and work through those blocks as you're planning your story. Stay tuned. All right, not too much of a personal intro this time. Remember that the Heart of Your Story Bootcamp, the time was changed from 11 a.m. to 6 p.m. Mountain Daylight Time. That's when I'll be going live. And of course, if you can't be there live, make sure to actually register for the bootcamp, and I will send you the replays through the email. So to do that, it's bit.ly/storyheart. Make sure and capitalize the S and the H so you don't get an error page. And that is coming up on August 22nd through 26th. And it's going to be a really fun boot camp. I cannot wait to teach it. I love teaching how to find the real theme and emotion of your story, from whence spring your characters and your motivations and your plot and everything. It's just super fun to really dig into that and geek out. So if you want to geek out with me about story, make sure and sign up for that bootcamp, okay? I also have a few coaching slots available this month that I want to fill in that have either been moved around or had cancellations. So if you are at all interested in me coaching you to write your book, email me at lkhillbooks@gmail.com. Just put coaching inquiry in the subject line, and I will send you my coaching menu so you can decide if that is something that you would be interested in doing. For those of you who don't know about my coaching, I coach you through how to figure out your story. I do not figure it out for you, but I help you to figure out where you want to go with it. And we'll figure out your characters, we'll figure out your internal, we'll figure out your plot. I'll help you outline it. I'll look over some of the chapters that you write, things like that. Okay, so it's a 90-day program, and at the end of that, you should have your book mostly written and 100% outlined. So that is what I do. If that is something you're interested in, like I said, just email me and I will send you the coaching menu and we can chat. All right, with that, let's get into today's topic. Okay, so how do we get ourselves into a pure creative story flow? How do we break through blocks when we're trying to outline, but we just can't come up with things, and we're sitting there going, oh, I don't know what to do next. Either I have no idea what to have happen next in the plot, or I have too many ideas and I don't know which one to choose. Well, as I've been saying a lot lately, this comes down to knowing what your theme is. When you have clarity on the internal theme of your story, that makes everything so much easier because you can apply it every step of the way. Now, one of the things I teach is that you do need to use cause and effect to tell your stories. So you shouldn't say this happens, then this happens. You should say this happens, therefore this happens, okay? This happens and this happens, therefore this happens. So that's part of it, is using cause and effect. If you can use cause and effect to plan your story, then you won't worry about necessarily what's coming next, because one thing will cause another. So you're not going to end up with all of these different possibilities. It's just going to become logical what happens next. And in terms of not knowing, based on the logic of what happened before, there are only so many things that could happen next, and you can just pick one, right? Whatever works best for your story. So that's a big part of it, is the cause and effect. But in terms of getting into the story flow, I'm going to say something that's going to sound a little bit trite, but I'm going to ask you to stick with me and let me explain. The best way to figure out your story, to really get into a story flow, is to ask yourself particular questions and then answer them. Okay, I know that sounds like a little too easy, but here's the thing. There are particular questions that you need to ask yourself in order to know what the heart of your story is. And then here's the thing. Most authors, they do have some idea what their story is, what their theme is, what their internal transformation is. So they'll just kind of be like, oh, well, it's this. And then they don't actually sit down and really hash it out, okay? And that's what you need to do. So let's talk about why for a minute. Why do you need to answer these questions? Because it gives you clarity on your story. But what it really does, guys, is it brings your story out of your subconscious mind and into your conscious mind. Now, I know that sounds very psychology 1010, but hear me out here. When you kind of know what your story is, but you don't know the details, your story is in your subconscious mind, okay? So you kind of know what it is and you kind of feel the emotion of what it is, but you'll have this experience as you start to do this where you actually state in great detail what your story is, what you're trying to convey, what your theme is, what you want your characters to go through. And it's almost like this barrier between you and your story burns down. Okay, so think of it like this. Maybe your story is in a certain place and there is a wooden slat fence around it, right? So you can kind of see your story. You know, you can look between the wooden slats and see parts of it, but there's still this thing in the way, and so it's hard to get a complete picture. It's hard to see more than one part at a time, right? Because your view is so limited because of that fence. What this does is it takes away the fence, so you can see your entire story with so much clarity. You will have so much authority on what you're trying to say and on what the story is going to be, that when you sit down to plan your plot, it just comes so naturally. It'll just flow. Okay, so that is the point of answering these questions, is to get yourself to that point about your story. If you've never done that, if you've never had that experience, then you've never told a story that you really understood inside and out. Okay, I know that might be a hard pill to swallow, and trust me, that's true of everybody in their first opening stories. That's why authors tend to not write as good as stories, in the beginning when they're getting started, but as they get more experience, they know what they need to know about their story and their characters, and they just become more grounded in their writing, and so that they know it inside and out. And so of course their later work is better, right? So we're going to shortcut this for you. If you will ask yourself the right questions and then take the time to sit down and answer them, actually journal about them and really hash them out, you'll be amazed at the clarity you get on your story. Okay, so this is a lot of what I'm going to teach you in the boot camp, but today I'm just going to go over a couple of the questions that you can ask yourself. So if you are, driving or jogging, obviously you're not going to be able to do this right now, but come back to it when you can, when you get home, when you have a minute. But if you can, take out a paper and pen right now and write these questions down. The first thing that I want you to answer is, how did you come up with your story? Think about the actual inception of your story. Any experiences you had, what made you think about it, and what you know about your story thus far. Okay, so those three things. How did you come up with it? Think about what made you think about it, what the experiences you had were, and what you know about your plot thus far. So even if you only know a couple of things and you don't really know your characters, or you don't really know what's going to happen in the story, like 2 things about it, okay, that's fine. Write that down. Because by exploring the inception of your story, you not only get yourself back into, what you were thinking back then and kind of into the creative groove of it, but you also start to explore the corners of your own mind and your own emotion when it comes to the story. So what I'd like you to do when you get a minute is write down those questions and then write at least a page in answering them. There's no right or wrong. You don't have to force something to come, okay? Just let it flow. Talk about what you're thinking about, let your mind wander into different, areas of that. The experience you had. And again, if you don't remember, if it's something you've been thinking about for years, so you have no idea when you first came up with it, just say that. I've been thinking about this on and off for years. And maybe it started one way and then has changed over time to be something else. So talk about how the idea has evolved, okay? You're just trying to get into the flow of your story. Now, little technical thing here. I would recommend you do this with a paper and pen. There have been actual studies that show that people who, write with their hand, it actually unlocks creativity. It helps get you into that flow state. It helps you relax your brain so you're not trying to force it to come. Now, I do know that a lot of people will want to do this typing at the computer because we're writers and most of us type. And yes, even I type much faster than I write. So that's fine if you want to do that, so long as you can get into that creative flow space. Just promise me that if you get stuck typing, you will switch to a paper and pen until you get unstuck, and then you can go back to your keyboard. Okay, so whichever way you want to do it is fine, but this is why journaling is such a powerful thing, because something about writing and thinking and writing down what you're thinking about really helps you to get unstuck, right? It helps you to get past those mental blocks we have and really get down to the heart of an issue. And that's what we're trying to do here, okay? So I would like you to write 1 full page, whether you're typing or writing with a pen, about how you first conceived your story in that questions I just asked. Once you're done with that, the second question that I want you to address is what you want to convey in the story. Why are you, as a person, as an author, interested in telling this story? Now, what I mean by that is look at what you already wrote down and ask yourself, why is that important to you? So if you conceived of a story because you were on a bus and maybe saw an instance of discrimination, then you can write down, I want to convey that this discrimination is not okay. The people who do this to other people, this is what's going to happen to them. It's sort of a poetic justice sort of thing, okay? That's what I mean. Just figure out, based on what you already know of your story and how you came up with it, why is that important to you? And just write it down. And once again, there's no right or wrong answer here. Just let the ideas flow. Let yourself explore every part of that. Let yourself go off on tangents if you need to. You might start thinking about one thing and then realize something else and go, no, I thought it was this, but actually, I think this is why this is important to me. And that's exactly what we're trying to discover here. This is a discovery process for you. This is what I mean, guys. Sometimes people tell a story and they're never completely in tune with why they're telling that story. Sure, good overcoming evil. People finding true love in the end. We all understand why those are universal themes, because they make people happy. But why do you want to tell the story in detail, not just the general platitudes of, this is a happy ending, but why is it important to you? And once you figure that out, that will give you so much clarity on your story, why you're telling it and where you need to go with it. Okay? So once again, I want you to sit down with this question, just like you did the first one. Answer what you're trying to say and why it's important to you that you tell the story. What are you getting out of it? What are you trying to convey to the reader? And write at least another page on that. And hey guys, you can write more than a page. If you want to keep going, write 5, 10, 15, 20 pages, more power to you. You do that. The more you write, the more clarity you will get on your story. Okay? So let's recap here. The best way to get yourself into a state of story flow, just this pure creative flow, is to ask yourself the right questions about your story, okay? I have only given you 2 questions, and I know there's several sub-questions in each one, but I've only given you those 2 questions today. There are about 25 of them that I use to help people really hash out their story. And you get clarity on it every step of the way. And then this is what I mean when I say you can have confidence in your story, because you're not guessing anymore about what would be the best thing, or what would be the best thing for the character, or what would be the best thing that would hook the reader. You know, because you're telling a cohesive story that has a rock hard foundation, okay? And that starts with you figuring out the internal of your story. That starts with you figuring out what the heart of your story is. And that is what I'm going to teach you in the boot camp in a few weeks here. So, once again, if you want to learn more of this kind of stuff, make sure and sign up for that boot camp at bit.ly/storyheart, capitalize the S and the H. And meanwhile, I would love it if you guys would go home whenever you have time, do this, and then give me some feedback. How did it go for you? DM me or email me at lkhillbooks.com or, whatever. I'm on Instagram and Facebook, and there's a Facebook group. There's a million ways you can get a hold of me, but I would love to hear how this went for you and, what kind of experience you had with it. Did this help you get clarity on your story? Did this help you figure some things out, or what struggles did you have while doing this? Were you still hitting mental blocks? I would love to hear some feedback if you guys would be willing to share. All right, but that is it for today. Happy writing and story flowing this week. And I will see you back here next week. And I hope I will see you all in the boot camp. Bye.